Hi, and welcome to the digital job site, where the boards are straight, the weather's great, and there really is a board stretcher. This is the video segment of a blog post at the digital job site blog titled Wall Layout and Framing Basics for the Simple Shed Project. There'll be two videos in this segment to discuss the process of layout for the walls for this simple shed project. And on the blog post I have this same picture of Sang standing here looking at the shed, wondering what's going on with studs in the door opening and studs in the window opening. And the reason I left it like that was that framing layout can be a little bit confusing when it's all done. And if I turn off some of these decorations and other parts of the shed model, you can see just the basic framing for the shed. I'm going to go up here and turn off the fog. Let's clear it up out here. And when the framing is all done, there's rough openings for the windows and the doors. And what I did was I took the wall that has a door in it along with its rough opening built into it, and the same for the window. And I just extracted those walls from the model because they can tend to complicate the layout understanding of what 16-inch on center, what 12-inch on center means, etc. So by removing those features and just showing nothing but the stud layout, I want to talk about the layout principle. So on the first video I talked about making sure that the stud layout will allow the seams in the plywood to be nailed on a stud. And for this shed I decided I'll just draw it as 16 inches on center. You could probably get away with 24 inches on center. But with those things in mind, I wanted to show just graphically what various stud spacing layouts look like. So what I did was I just copied some studs here and copied and pasted them and made this little forest of 2x4s that are standing out here. And each row is spaced differently. The first row, these are 12 inches on center. These are 16 inches on center. And as I go through here, I threw in a 19.2 inches on center. It's about 19 and a quarter. And then went to 24 inches on center in this row. And what I was hoping to show with this is that if all the centers start out in the same place, like this, then the first one lines up, and then the 12-inch on center and the 2-foot on center line up at 2 feet. The 12-inch, the 16-inch, and the 2-foot line up at 4 feet, and then all of the layouts line up at 8 feet. I hope that makes sense. So if we take a section of these, like this, by selecting this group of studs, I can just move those and orient them next to the shed here. And you can see how the 16-inch on center studs line up. And as I've talked a couple times, the first stud is 3/4 inch off layout so that that a sheet of plywood lands in the middle of the stud instead of an edge. But you can see how the 16-inch on center lines up exactly there. And if we were to do the same thing and take the row of 12-inch on center framing, so we can select that one out. And if we're to line that up, then it takes the 4 foot on center lines up and so forth. The unusual one in here, it's less common in the carpentry thought process, but it's the 19.2 inch on center layout, which lines up on at 8 feet with the other layouts. And all that does is, for structural reasons, a lot of the engineered roof trusses and floor trusses use a 19.2 inch center because the truss members are strong enough that they can allow the increased span and eliminate one truss every it eliminates one truss every 8 feet as compared to 16 inches on center. I think I finally said that right. But those are the various layout schemes. In this shed, I just decided to lay it out at 16 inches on center, which is represented here. When we did the floor framing, I'll take out the subfloor here. You can see how each wall stud is lined up over a floor joist going all the way through. And then ultimately, once the rafters are in place, there'll be a rafter on top of each one of those studs. And the theory behind that is that the weight transferred from the roof to the walls, or from a roof to a second floor to a first floor to a foundation, that the load transfers directly down the framing members. But that gives us a 16 inch on center layout. Another thing to notice here, I'll get into it in another blog post, is you can see how the sidewall, in this case, the sidewall laps onto the end walls. Let's see, I'll put the subfloor back in. And the same thought there is that the end walls fit in between the side walls. And so when they do, we still want the siding to break on the 4 foot stud. So our layout starts at the outside of the framing here and goes 16 inches to the center of that first stud. But that first stud is only 11 3/4 from the end of the wall plate and 12 1/2 from the wall plate to the center of the stud. So the point I'm trying to make is that the layout doesn't necessarily always start at the end of the wall plate. You have to think about where you want your framing to end up and decide how you're going to lay that out. If we were to move this wall in so that this first stud was 16 inches from the end of the plate, then when it's time to put the siding on, if we show the siding back on, then go make a pivoting zoom around here. You can see if the layout isn't accurate, then this joint in the siding will be flopping in the breeze because there's no stud to nail it to. So I hope those principles are making sense. And even though this is just a basic 8 foot square shed, the principles apply to any type of framing, L-shaped, various stories, whatever. These are the principles that you want to incorporate for that. The other thing I'll cover here quickly on this video segment is about backing on the inside of the shed. Actually, I'm going to stop this here and put the backing for the corners and then the rough openings in the next tutorial segment for this blog post. So I hope you'll come back for part 2 for that additional information. Thanks for watching.